Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Senator Schmitt doesn't just crush this interview, he makes Kaitlan Collins look like she has no clue what she's doing, which she's good enough at doing herself. Let's dive in.
So you're not worried that if in 2 weeks, on August 1st, that deadline he's been teasing, he puts more tariffs in place, that we could see these inflation numbers continue to go up in the next critical months that everyone's going to be watching?
Well, it just didn't happen when we had tariffs in President Trump's first term. There was a lot of conjecture about whether or not those tariffs were going to cause inflation. It just didn't happen. You've seen actually record dollars into the Treasury. Now you saw a surplus anticipating, $300 billion a year in revenue from essentially that 10% tariff. So I think that really this is about rebalancing the trade imbalance that we've had for such a long time in this country and getting countries to the table to drop not just their tariffs, Caitlin, but all these other trade barriers that exist. And with China is a whole different category with their IP theft and a lot of the dumping that they do. But you're seeing our allies especially come to the table now. They want to negotiate with President Trump, and I think when we do that, we're going to be much better off. And all that's happening at one time. So we're in the first 7 months of the administration.
Yeah.
You've got big, beautiful bill, you've got rescissions, you've got the trade deals, you've got the investment. There's enough runway for that to play out.
And of course, the tariffs, though, that we saw in the first term were much more targeted than the ones that we're seeing now. So that is why the questions about inflation are different here. But one thing I want to ask you about is today I was asking the president about his recent threat on Brazil and justifying the tariffs against Brazil. Obviously, as you know, the United States has a $7.4 billion trade surplus with that country. This is what he told me.
How do you justify putting tariffs on Brazil if they have a surplus with the United States?
We are doing it because I'm able to do it. Nobody else would be able to do it.
Is that enough for a legal justification, in your view, not liking what a country's judicial system is doing?
Well, the president has that authority, absolutely. The question is whether or not that's actually going to happen or not. I think President Trump has been very adept at bringing people to the table on a whole host of issues because nobody's been willing to wield, trade policy in a way that President Trump has. The fact of the matter, Caitlin, is we have been ripped off for a very, very long time. And I think rebalancing this equation is very important. In my home state of Missouri, we saw the loss of those manufacturing jobs. You saw people imported into this country who were undercutting wages. And for the first time now, we've got a president that cares about that. America isn't some, strip mall with an airport. It's our home. And so he's fighting for working class families. And I think, again, this negotiation that happens with a bunch of countries on a bunch of different, different landscape, we're going to be better off for it.
Yeah, of course, Brazil, though, is just focused on the prosecution that's underway of the former leader there. But let me ask you about what's happening on Capitol Hill.
Hold on. Let's also remember, they're also a member of BRICS, this alliance with communist China. And I think what's coming to a head here is that some countries are going to have to make a decision now. Are you going to align yourself by way of trade with the United States of America, or are you going to be with a communist dictatorial regime that has concentration camps?
He's made clear it's about Bolsonaro, and he repeated that today. He brought it up today, asking about how his trial was going. But let me ask you about what's happening on Capitol Hill, because you were leading the efforts to codify DOJ's cuts to the federal government through Congress to make it law. Senator Murkowski and we've seen Senator Susan Collins and Senator Mitch McConnell all voting against moving that package out of committee. The vice president broke the tie. Do you believe ultimately this will get passed despite the concerns we've heard about this?
I do. I think that our conference is very well united on this. I mean, this is $9 billion that really gets at some of the worst of the worst. I mean, DEI trainings in Burma, transgender surgeries, or, sex change operations in Guatemala, $1 million for voter ID in Haiti. There's some irony in that. So all of that crazy stuff, Caitlin, is in this, and then including the $1.1 billion for NPR and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. NPR is an ideologically captured institution at this point, spewing out venom against Republicans at every turn, and so they don't deserve taxpayer dollars. So I think when you put all that stuff in this one package, the $9 billion, which is $90 billion in a 10-year window, we need to get that done, I think, to deliver on behalf of the American people and restore some trust that this stuff isn't going to be wasted.
You thought you had him for a moment, didn't you, Caitlin? Huh. Bless your heart. Remember, Senator Schmitt, he might be the less well-known senator from Missouri, but he's still one of the better ones that understands exactly how to deal with the mainstream media. And Kaitlan Collins came at him with everything she could have possibly thrown. and she got knocked out of the park for it. It's like throwing in that reliever with a 6.08 ERA. You know that this dude's going to get rocked. And I'm shocked that CNN still has her around. But I think the real reason that she still has a job is because she's fiery enough to get some confrontations. But even in the question that she had for Trump, Trump knows how to deal with her. He's not going to answer her question directly because her question was kind of ridiculous. The whole argument around dealing with Brazil right now, it entirely revolves around the relationship between Bolsonaro and BRICS. Okay, BRICS is an organization of a handful of countries: Brazil, Russia, Iran. It might be Iran. It might be India, China, and North Korea. And these nations think that they're going to create something cohesive against the rest of the world. We have U.S. states that produce more than all of these countries combined at times. Hey, y'all. Experts say they rig the markets, print the money, and manipulate the system. But here's the truth. They can't print gold. While the dollar weakens, physical gold and silver stay real, tangible, uncontrolled. When banks go digital and emergencies lock you out of your own funds, gold and silver won't need an internet connection or government permission. Their value is outside the system, a time-tested insurance policy against tyranny, inflation, and economic resets. So don't wait until the trap is sprung. Own what the elites hoard behind closed doors. Physical gold and silver off the grid, because when the system fails, real money talks. And to help you learn more about owning physical gold and silver, we have partnered with the great company Goldco, which supports this channel, which we deeply appreciate. So check out politbralgold.com for more info and see if you might even qualify for free silver. That's politbralgold.com. And so the relationship that Brazil has with BRICS, they think they're going to break from the system when the reality is they need to look inward and actually think, why is Argentina doing so well? Why is El Salvador doing so well? Why is Colombia doing so well? Colombia finally got a stranglehold on the problem and finally ironed out their differences. So now that there's no more war going on in their backcountry, El Salvador, they rounded up the known criminals, put them in a prison, and now it's one of the most economically viable countries along in the strip of Central America. And of course, we've got to talk about Argentina and how their massive turnaround has happened, but we also need to talk about these tariffs being kind of successful. Even Reuters is having to admit that these tariffs are having a positive effect. Listen to this. U.S. Customs duty collections surged again in June as President Donald Trump's tariffs gained steam, topping $100 billion for the first time during a fiscal year and helping to produce a surprise $27 billion budget surplus for the month, the Treasury Department reported on Friday. Wait a minute. The tariffs are working? Why isn't this front page news? This should be one of the most successful policies and that everyone needs to be thanking the president for, but instead we're getting into the muck and the mire of other stories that aren't as impactful. We just had the big beautiful bill, and the design of that has been to clean up all of the issues that have been that have just piled up under the Biden administration, and now you mean to tell me that we're clearing $100 billion, $27 billion in surplus, thanks to Donald Trump and his tariffs? Again, this is monumental. That means something is working. We're starting to have actual free trade, and we're starting to get nations to come to the table. So, of course, Brazil is going to be made a mild example of, particularly because they're jailing their political prisoners. They're quite literally rounding up the right-wingers, putting them in prison, and calling it success. It's wild to me what's going on in Brazil. It kind of makes sense because they never do what's in the best interest of the rest of the continent. Again, this all goes back to Spain and Portugal not being able to get along. The whole history of that area is very, very odd. And the moment that they realize that, hey, wait a minute, we should be an economic powerhouse. Brazil actually has some of the better soils on the face of this planet. They are a fantastic growing climate, and not because of the rainforest. They have their own highland region. Them, Argentina, Uruguay, these whole nations are net producers on the world scale, and they can't get their act together. All right, Argentina finally figured out that, okay, if we kick out the ridiculous lefty-style, borderline communistic, bureaucratized nation, you kick out those nihilist bureaucrats, guess what? Things improve. Things improve. We're seeing that in our own nation, and now we have quite literal economic evidence. But of course, Kaitlan Collins isn't going to call this out. She isn't going to talk about this because it means that Donald Trump is doing something right, and CNN can't say that. And I mean that quite literally. They cannot afford to say that. The moment that they do, they will lose viewership because the people that watch CNN want their confirmation bias so bad. It's like a drug that they're addicted to. They can't admit, because of their own hubris, because of their ideology, they can't admit that things are getting better under Trump, and particularly in the second term, when he's realized, oh, I didn't go far enough. But folks, what do you think about the tariffs? Do you think it's a success? Let me know down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.